Where do pros get their gear these days? You'd be surprised. Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever's on your mind, be it bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB Pro League stuff, whatever's on your mind. Obviously, the Arnold Classic in just about a month, and we're excited to inform you that we will be going there. Dave and I kind of confirmed our plans yesterday, so we'll be heading over there probably the Thursday, right before Thursday morning. We'll be arriving, and then of course we'll do around the town segment, the athlete interviews with Meet the Athletes on Thursday night, and then of course prejudging, final wrap-ups, and you never know who we're going to bump into during the final wrap-ups. Backstage will be one of, if not the only, media outlet doing live content from there. So we're excited again. The Arnold Classic, and of course that marks the beginning of the Pro League calendar. As we go into the questions, the first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Probably a tough question, but in your experience and opinion, do you think most pro bodybuilders use underground gear like most people, or do you think they're getting prescriptions for higher doses through a doctor somehow?
I think that people would be surprised by this answer, because I think that a lot of people think that the pros have these incredible connections, you know, to get whatever they need. And I think there are a bunch of people out there that do, probably connected to some rejuvenation clinics that have doctors that are willing to write prescriptions for them, might have European connections with you know, stuff that's still being legitimately made. But I think the majority of guys are using underground gear, and I think a lot of them make their own gear, to be honest with you. They're buying the raw materials from China and they're making their own stuff, or they have friends that make their own stuff and they're getting it from them. And I think more than likely, I think a lot of the top pros probably have good connections with underground gear that they know is either being tested or it's coming from a pure source. But I think that the amount and dosages that guys are using is just not conducive to getting it at a rejuvenation clinic, because you can't justify writing a prescription for, you know, 1,200 milligrams of testosterone a week, you know, much less a month. So it's almost impossible to get it legitimately, you know, without, you know, setting off a bunch of, you know, bells and whistles. Hey, something illegal is going on here. So I think a lot of the guys just rely on underground stuff. But I don't think they're I don't think a lot of the top pros are buying it from guys in the gym. You know what I mean? They have good, solid connections. Either they're doing it themselves or they know people who do it legitimately. And probably the gear they're using is probably dosed higher than what, you know, what's actually out there. Because let's face it, if you're making your own, you know how much you're putting in there. So I think a lot of these underground labs are underdosed because they're trying to save money. So rather than put 200 milligrams of testosterone in there, they'll put 100 in there. And no one knows the difference, right? It's hard to decipher that. You can use my Roy test kits, which I recommend everyone do, you know, for 22 bucks, whatever. You test your product to see if it's legit. It'll tell you if it's testosterone, but you're still not going to know if it's dosed, you know, accurately. I can't tell you how many people come to me and they say to me, thank God I listened to you, and I went on your Dave Palumbo site and bought the Roy test kits, because you were right. Half of what I was using was nothing, and the other half was not even what it was supposed to be. It was all test propionate. So, you know, I hate to say it, there are people that are not getting the results that they should be getting out there. And it's not because they don't train well, and it's not because they don't eat right. It's because the gear sucks. And so don't listen to the guy who gives it to you and says, this is the greatest stuff. So-and-so uses it. Mr. Olympia uses it. This is the secret stash. Test it. Like I said, for 20 something bucks, is it worth wasting time and money? Test the stuff, make sure it's real, and then use it. Okay. Especially if you're a woman. If you're a woman, you should not be using Primobolan, and you should not be using Winstrol and Anavar without testing it, because you could be using testosterone and Dianabol. And in a lot of situations, I hate to say it because I see all these test results because people email me and say, what is this stuff? That's exactly what's happening. So be cautious. Yes, most people are using underground labs, and because of that, you must test it and make sure that what you're using is real. I mean, like I said, over at DavePalumbo.com, we have the Roy test kits. You can test all the anabolics. You can test GH, and you can test clenbuterol. And the clenbuterol tester will even tell you how much clenbuterol is actually in there. That's the only tester that will do that. But guys, skip, please. I promise you, you'll thank me, because even if you save yourself on one compound that you thought you were buying, especially if it's GH, GH is very expensive. At least know if it's real.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Wow, this one's a bit of a throwback. Couples bodybuilding. Why did couples bodybuilding die off? Seems like it will be a big hit nowadays.
The problem with couples bodybuilding is that it's the same thing with why they don't judge the posing around in bodybuilding, because it's very hard to understand. I mean, couples bodybuilding is all about synchronized posing on stage. It's not really the physiques. It's how you present yourself. It's the entertainment value of it. And I just think these judges don't know how to judge entertainment value. There was never like a set of criteria how to judge. And it was kind of just like, well, what looks good up there? And I think that's why it died out. I think it was popular back in the 80s and 90s because it was only bodybuilding. So you weren't getting to see anything else. So to have another division of bodybuilding, it was kind of like entertaining. And there was never a million, there would be like 5 or 6 people who would enter. I remember the nationals in couples, and you'd see some interesting pairs of people put together. And it was always, I thought it was entertaining. I liked it. But like I said, there was really no defined criteria of how they judged, and it really didn't give you any status. It was kind of just like, oh, I won the mixed couples, pair posing. Nowadays, they probably have like same-sex synchronized, posing, because with the current environment we're in politically. I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing it at like the nationals and stuff like that, just to have one division, see if people would actually show up and do it together. You could probably get like a women's physique competitor and a classic physique competitor. You probably have some beautiful routines. Maybe you can even get Kai Green to come back to do some mixed pairs. I think he did that back in the day, in the 90s. I think he did a few of those events. So it would be nice. By the way, these 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app, you can download it to your iPhone or your Android phone. It's at the App Store. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You have access to all my writings, my videos. We do a Q&A video every single week for the app members. So it's like an extra Ask Dave. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum so you can see everyone's questions and answers. A great learning experience. We put up workouts of the week. All my drug cycles are there. All my diets, the cyclical keto diet, the keto diet, off-season diets. Everything is in one place. And you know what? It's constantly evolving the information. I'm telling you, you know what? If you're really into knowledge and you're really into coaching and you're really into understanding what the latest and greatest information in the industry is out there and all the newest, modalities and peptides, all that stuff, you gotta have a resource to be able to do that. And that's what I do with the Dave Palumbo Experience app. I'm constantly updating with the newest and greatest stuff. It keeps your mind sharp because I'm talking about the most recent topics, the most recent things that come out. And it's probably one of the only ways you can kind of keep up on what you're doing. And that all the information on there is accurate, scientifically speaking. A lot of information on the internet, you don't know what to believe these days. That's why I put the app together. That's why we have so many members there, because people want to continue learning, and they know that this is going to add to their knowledge base as coaches, and it's going to keep them sharp. So thank you for your support.
Let's go to our questions from before we go to our questions, our friends at Titan Medical Center are running a deal on their therapy of the week. And this week it is DSIP. DSIP is back at Titan Medical Center. It's a sleep peptide. We have a few new items that they're going to share as the week progresses. But DSIP is the therapy of the week at Titan Medical Center.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't have it for a while. I used this stuff. What it does is it puts you into a deeper level of sleep, what's called delta sleep. So it's a peptide. When you fall asleep, it puts you into a deeper state of relaxed recovery sleep, which we call delta wave sleep. And it does work. I mean, I feel like when I take it, I get like, if I get like 6 hours of sleep, I feel like I got 8 hours, that kind of thing. It makes you more, it's like a more restful night's sleep. Some people have very superficial sleep. They're up all the time. They're constantly waking up and going back to sleep. That's not a deep, restful sleep. You can be in bed 10 hours like that, and you can wake up and still be exhausted. So if that's something that's happening with you, you might want to try this peptide. It's really good. They put it on sale. When you go to TitanMedicalCenter.com and you call them up, tell them Dave Palumbo, RX Muscle sent you, they're going to give you a great discount. It's back in. I don't know how long they're going to have it for, but I take advantage of it. I actually ordered mine and told them to send it to me.
Let's go to our YouTube community page, our Facebook page, Instagram page for the rest of the questions. We had a similar question last week, but this is a little bit more expansive regarding heart health while on cycle. This is more of a general guideline of some supplements that you recommend for organ health and, you know, heart health as well, on
Sure.
and off gear. So is there a general list of supplements that you would recommend for organ maintenance on and off gear?
Right. Well, for daily basic health, okay, and well-being, and making sure that your body has the right vitamins, minerals, and trace metals for all the chemical reactions that happen daily in your body. That means carbohydrate metabolism, protein synthesis, fat oxidation, which is fat burning. They all require, these chemical reactions all require these vitamins, minerals, and trace metals as cofactors. And when you're engaging in a lot of this stuff, because you're in the gym and you're eating an enormous amount of food, you have a much greater need for these minerals, trace metals, and vitamins. So I made your job easy for you. Basically, I put everything together in 2 formulas. V-Mineralize, which I listen, I feel terrible that it still hasn't come out. I scream every single day at my manufacturer, where are the bottles? Supposedly they're coming in at the end of the week. That's what I hear. So the new V-Mineralize is coming out. It's got more vitamin D3 in it, 5,000 units a day. It's got vitamin K2 in it, which we know directs calcium away from the blood vessels into the bones and muscles. Okay. And it has a methylated form of folic acid. So we all know that a lot of people can't methylate 2 B vitamins, B12 and folic acid. We already had we already had methyl cobalamin in the original V-Mineralize, which is the methylated form of B12, which makes it usable immediately. And now we have a methylated form of folic acid. It's called methylfolate. So this is going to be the best multivitamin, multi-mineral, trace metal, antioxidant, polyphenolic on the market. There's nothing better than it. You don't need to take anything else with this. It has everything in there you could possibly want. The only other thing I recommend is for essential fatty acids, which is very hard to get from the diet, you take Omega Lyse. If you do those 2 things, you're covered. Your cholesterol inflammation is going to be down. All your chemical reactions are covered. The only thing I would add, okay, is when you're doing your detoxes, okay, on a regular basis, you could add some liver support. Now, I sell Bill Llewellyn's product on DavePalumbo.com. It's called Liver Stable. It's a great product. And if you're running high creatinine, which would indicate that your kidneys are stressed, there's a product that it's the only product in the market that works. It's called Kidney Stuff. And I also sell that at DavePalumbo.com. That's not a product I make, but I believe in those 2 products. So I sell it just to make people's life easier. You don't need anything else because the vitamins, minerals, trace metals, and the essential fatty acid supplement Omega Lyse take care of your heart health. Everything's in there that you need for your heart. Okay. And your brain for that matter. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to detox the 2 organs that seem to be the most stressed in bodybuilding, which is kidneys and liver. And we can do that every 6 months or so. We don't need to do that all the time. And, usually we definitely do it when we come off cycle before we do blood work, but you probably should do it 6 months after that, especially if you're staying on a good majority of the year. And 2 months of it is probably adequate. If you have high creatinine that's, higher than it should be, and it's elevated for a longer period of time, then you stay on the kidney stuff longer. liver regenerates very quickly. The kidneys take a little longer to regenerate. They could take up to 6 months. And in some situations, a year if you have a lot of damage to your kidney. So once again, we want to control blood pressure for kidney health as well. But the liver, like I said, is very resilient. As long as you don't let it get away from you and you do these modalities every 6 months, you should be fine.
Question about boron. I didn't ask you this fairly recently, did I?
No.
Okay. I was told that the mineral boron increases the effectiveness of test. Do you know if there's any evidence to support that?
Well, in the 80s and 90s, they used to say take boron, it would increase testosterone levels. That was like the mantra back then. Like all these natural testosterone boosters had boron, and they would have these ads at the back of the bodybuilding magazines. Like it was almost like you thought you were buying testosterone. The way they made these ads seem like you're going to have 10 times the testosterone you normally have. And then you'd read the fine print, it was like boron they were selling you. The truth is that you know what the best use of boron is? It's really good for your joints and connective tissue. We have boron. We have the patented form of boron in Arthrolyze. So it's one of those minerals that's really important for the joint health and repair and stuff like that. It's not going to do anything for testosterone, pretty much, but it's really good for the joint repair. So if you're taking like a joint product like my Arthrolyze, a lot of people take that. I live on the stuff, obviously. Most people do as well who have any kind of joint issues. You're getting the boron that you need in there, and it's put in the right dosage and the right absorption rate.
Your thoughts on MCT oil?
Yeah, and I've said this before. I guess it's worth repeating. There's two types of fats, essentially. There's the two categories of the way they burn. I'm not talking about the different types of like fats, like polyunsaturated, monounsaturated. Just talking about it in terms of how they burn. The long chain fatty acids, which are the majority of the fats, and then we have the short chain or medium chain fats that work differently. And I'll explain what the difference is, how the body processes them. The way fats get metabolized or burnt up for fuel in the body is the fats can pass right through the cell membrane of the muscle cells because they're fat soluble. Once inside the cell, these fats need to get into the mitochondria of the cell, which is like the energy powerhouse plant where they get oxidized and used for fuel. And in order to get into the mitochondria, they have to pass through a membrane. Okay. If in the case of long chain fatty acids, they need to use a carrier molecule to get them in there. That's called L-carnitine. So the limiting step of fat oxidation is not necessarily how many mitochondria you have; it's the L-carnitine, availability, and that's why there's some suggestions to suggest that taking extra L-carnitine helps with fat, mobilization if you're in a very high fat burning state. Short chain fats and medium chain fats, MCTs and short chain fats, they pass through the cell membrane just like the long chain fats do, but then they can get into the mitochondria without the need of a carrier molecule. So they don't need the L-carnitine. They go right in there and get used for fuel immediately. So they call them the fatless fat because they get used for fuel preferentially first. The problem with these short chain fats and these medium chain fats is they don't really have any other use in the body, okay, other than fuel. Okay. In other words, whereas like macadamia nut oil or avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil, they're very heart healthy. They affect cholesterol levels. The fish oils are anti-inflammatory, and they also, they do a lot of great things for, improving heart health. These medium chain fats don't do anything. Okay. So when I'm asked, like, if you figure out, let's say you need your daily fat requirement is 75 grams a day, and you're going to do 15 grams per meal, divide times 5 meals. Obviously, you're not going to put it in your post-workout shake. And that's what you determine. Why would you use a fat that has nothing to offer other than fuel, whereas you can use a fat that can be used for fuel and or heart health or, organ health? Or remember, those essential fats are also used for muscle cell repair. All the cell membranes around all the muscle cells are made up of these essential fats. So the question is, to me, I wouldn't waste my fat inventory on medium chain and short chains that don't do anything in the body other than provide a fuel source. I would rather take in a healthier fat, like I said. And remember, we need saturated fats too for muscle cell membrane repair, and saturated fats which have cholesterol to make steroidal hormones in the body. So I would never eat medium chain fats ever in my regimens, because I think it's a waste of calories. Now, coconut oil happens to be a medium chain fat. Okay. And so the question is, when would you employ coconut oil? Coconut oil happens to be a good immune system stimulant. So if you're immunocompromised, a lot of times they recommend coconut oil. But in my estimation, I don't use coconut oil except to rub on my skin if it needs moisturizing. And actually, I use macadamia oil for that too, but it's a little more expensive to use the macadamia oil. So like I said, to sum up everything, if you're going to eat fats and you have a limited amount that you're consuming daily, I wouldn't waste it on medium chain fats.
Well, yesterday on After Hours, and if you haven't already watched that episode, it is on the channel right now. Go to the live tab. Yesterday's episode of After Hours, and one of the biggest topics from the show was about Greg Valentino. We kind of went through his different phases from his time as a natural teen and his progression, obviously, and then what became, obviously, with the site enhancement. So the question is about Greg. Back in 2010, you were interviewing the inventor of synthol, Chris Clark, about various site enhancements. Chris mentioned that Valentino's arms are not from gear or a synthol enhancement, but something else. And then I guess you mentioned that it could possibly be silicone. Has Valentino ever had an MRI on his arms to prove you and Chris Clark wrong?
Well, knowing Greg as long as I do, he's really not a liar. Okay. So when he explained what he did to his arms, it makes perfect sense. I mean, he was injecting 10 cc's of test propionate into his arms like 3 times or 4 times a week. What he was building up, what happened eventually is he started building up pockets in his arms where the oil wasn't getting absorbed anymore. And he was just filling up like a balloon almost, these pockets that were isolated from the rest of his body with just oil. And he was doing that every 3 times a week. And that's how his arms got so big. So I believe him. I think he only used test propionate. I don't think he's lying. I know he didn't use synthol. He didn't even know what it was back then. And I don't think he ever got silicone in his arms at all, because if you saw when he had the infection and it was draining in that video that he did, the man with the exploding arms, you could see it oozing out of there. If there was silicone in there, that never would have happened. It would have gotten hard. And that's not consistent with what he did. He just was a maniac and did, like, by his own admission, he's not a guy who ever lies about things. He doesn't have to. He tells the truth about everything, whether it makes him look embarrassed or not. And so he was injecting massive amounts of test propionate into his arms. And you see what happened. Don't try this at home. That's the take-home message.
And again, that episode of After Hours right now on the RX Muscle YouTube channel. How do you suggest, good one here, again, we do get questions from people that have, the kind of jobs, the kind of work routines that make it difficult to live the quote unquote bodybuilding lifestyle. How do you suggest creating a training split for the blue collar worker who does manual labor? How do you find the right formula for training, recovery, etc., and balancing the wear and tear each day while still maximizing effort in the gym?
When I first started working out at my very first real gym I ever went to, it was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I went to college. And I had just really started training. So I thought I was a big shot, but I was probably like 180 pounds. And that was big for me because I was probably 140 pounds starved down there when I was running in college. And my last year, I started working out. And there were guys, everyone in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, at that point in the 80s, late 80s, worked for Armstrong. It was like a rubber company where they make tires and shit like that. And they had round the clock shifts. So depending on when I went to the gym, it was in the morning. The night shift guys were coming back from work and they were going to get a workout in before they went home and then ate and slept. Sometimes if I went later in the afternoon, it was like the early shift guys were coming in to get their workout in. And these guys would come in work boots and the work clothes, and they would bang out the workouts. And these guys were strong. They were probably all on steroids back then. I didn't know what steroids were even more, but they were thick and dense. They would lift it heavy. And, I got to know all those guys, and they would be coming from work. They worked, with manual labor, 8-hour shift. They came to the gym, they got the workout done, and then they went home. And I was like, man, these guys are really I'm complaining about having to go to sit in a classroom at college and then come here after like 2 hours of classroom to get to work out. These guys are working manual labor 8 hours and doing it. And I remember Kirk DeFrancesco from Pittsburgh. He was a stonemason, and he would go to the gym after doing his stonemasonry all day long. And I think Ronnie Coleman was a cop too. Same thing. Obviously not as vigorous, not as taxing on the body, but you build into your schedule the ability to, when I'm going to go to the gym, when I'm going to eat my food. If you make plans and you figure it out, and when you're going to sneak everything in, you can do anything that you put your mind to. The problem is people wing it, and they miss the gym because they're too tired. They don't bring the food with them. They miss meals, and then they don't make the progress. And they say, oh, I got too much work. I can't do it. Well, how come that other guy can do it? I always ask people, how bad do you want it? If you want it bad enough, you'll find a time to do it. And you'll be, I take my hat off. I think women are way more resilient than men. I see women, they're single moms. They have 3 kids. They have to drop them at school. They have a full-time job. Then they go into school at night, and they're still going to the gym and competing. I'm like, how the heck how do you have enough hours in the day to do it? They get it done somehow. I don't know. I think if you want it bad enough, you'll plan it and you'll figure out a way to do it.
A couple of questions ago, we were talking about site enhancement. This question is about any new site enhancement oils. Is there anything new on the market?
I have not seen anything that really impressed me tremendously. There are, a couple brands out there that are okay. I know Armand Adibi sells a brand, InstaSize, on his website. I loved the original Chris Clark synthesized pump and pose. Now I hear it's still being made. Okay, I'm actually trying to see if it's still available to bring to the U.S. because I had some good contacts there with it. I know it was being made in Russia, and I just when Chris died, I kind of lost track of the guy, and then someone contacted me recently. I don't know if it's still available, but if it is, it would, that was the best product ever made. I think Steve DeLuca's painless pumps was really good after that because it didn't hurt. He had some minerals in there that kind of, balanced electrolytes and worked really well, but then he died too. So the problem is the 2 best products out there disappeared because of the inventors just, passed away. Steve, as far as I know, no one knew his real formula. Chris, there is a manufacturer someplace in Europe. I think it might be in Russia that makes it. Once again, I don't know if it'll ever be available again, but that was the best product. At this point in time, I think just site injecting, your regular gear is probably the best, methodology at this point, barring any, good products out there. And like I said, it's hard because, you want to make sure that it's not too much of an irritant. You want to make sure that it has some technology in it. Like it's just not some oil someone's thrown in a jar, and you want to make sure it's sterile because you don't want to get abscesses from the stuff. So it can be dangerous if these criteria are not being met. And so that's why I'm a little hesitant to start making recommendations. Plus I don't use it anymore. So I wouldn't even know firsthand. I would have to just tell you secondhand from other bodybuilders, and no one has really given me, tremendous feedback as to what would be the greatest product out there.
We have a lot of good questions. We're not going to get to all of them. We'll save them for next week, but we do appreciate all of your contributions, all of your really, week in, week out. I've been doing this show for the better part of 12 years now, and we still get a lot of fresh questions. So what we're doing now, we already started, and you can go to our YouTube page on the, the short form, putting up a lot more short form content for both Species and RX Muscle. And a lot of these questions are going to be absolute gold for that. So that's something that we plan on ramping up over the course of the next few weeks. And then, of course, our Arnold Classic coverage is going to begin in short order, with the show just a month away. And certainly we'll have preview segments, perhaps some interviews with some of the top, bodybuilders from the show, and a lot more. And then, of course, Dave, myself, Chris Aceto, and we'll see who else is going to be there. You never know who we're going to run into while they're in Columbus, but we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage of the 2026 Arnold Classic. Let's try to squeeze in a couple of more. Do you think Tri-Methyl-Glycine, TMG, is an effective bodybuilding supplement or just a bunch of hype?
It's mostly good for people who have blood sugar control issues. I actually started taking it because some people just are lacking some of the genetics or they have gene defects in being able to produce, that the necessary component of what Tri-Methyl-Glycine is. And it's a methylated form of glycine, was really what it is. And because they can't methylate glycine, this seems to help. And it does seem to have an effect on improving blood sugar control if that happens to be the case. And the only way you would know that would be to have your DNA tested. I sell some DNA tests at davepalumbo.com. It's called DNA Power. It's a Canadian company. They do a great job. They test so many different genes. They go over the results with you, which is great. And they can make some supplement suggestions. And like I said, I take a little, what I do is when I do my Fiberlife shake at night, I take a scoop of Tri-Methyl-Glycine, I throw it in there. Life Extension makes a powdered form of it with a little scooper. And I figured it can't hurt, so I think I have a slight defect in that gene. I don't know if it's enough to make a big difference, but it doesn't, I always say it can't hurt to take it. I don't think every bodybuilder needs it. Once again, if you get your DNA tested, you'll find out if you have a gene defect in that gene. But there are a lot of people that have trouble methylating certain vitamins. And if you do, it might be worth it to take the or try Tri-Methyl-Glycine, especially if you do have blood sugar control issues.
We have a question from Singapore as to whether or not species supplements are sold in Singapore. Now, I know years ago, we used to have some distribution out in, I believe it was like Macau or Hong Kong area. Is there any distribution at the moment that you could speak of in Singapore, or is that a phone call that we're going to have Aman Kumar make?
We might have to, if anyone knows any places in Singapore that would like to carry species, or if anyone out there is watching and they're from Singapore, please contact us. We'd love to get the products in Singapore. Yeah, we were in Macau for a long time when we even went out there, if you remember, back in the day with the whole troops. We did a Bros versus Pros out in Macau, and then we went and visited Hong Kong. It was our good friend Pedro Martinez out there, and we had a really, really good time. And Pedro Gomez, excuse me. And his mom and him, brought us in, and it was one of the most fun trips I've had, because I love Hong Kong, and I got to visit all the fish stores there, the aquarium stores, and you eat all the weird food. And I even tried McDonald's in Hong Kong, and it had some different menu items there, but the hamburgers were the hamburgers, so it was all good. Now, I love visiting exotic places like that. I don't know if Pedro and his mom still have that gym anymore, but they were carrying species there for a while. But if anyone has connections in Singapore, or would like us to bring the products in, you could always reach out to us.
Question about the 90s. Actually, before I ask that, how many countries do you think you've tried McDonald's in now? Because I feel like every country you go to, you try McDonald's there.
You gotta. Mexico, Hong Kong, definitely Spain, Barcelona. I went there. I think I went in Prague too. Prague. I did it in, I think, the airport in Latte, Finland. I had McDonald's. I've probably eaten in a McDonald's in at least 10 different countries, I would have to say. which is kind of sad, but but at the same time, it's pretty predictable for someone like me.
It's a thing. That's what we call it.
Yeah.
Last question about the 90s. Was nubain and GHB the key to that insane 90s look that we don't see anymore?
I don't think it was. I don't think it was. It was the what was responsible for the way the guys looked. I think it was the drug of choice back then. It was GHB was legal. You can buy it in a health food store. And Dan Duchesne got everyone hooked on nubain. He said that was the greatest thing. Nowadays, guys take kratom and CBD, and and everyone smokes weed, it seems like. So it's a generational thing. I think everyone wants to know how to relax, right? I think we're just a population of people that don't know how to chill out. We don't know how to meditate. We don't know how to bring our own energy down. And we have to figure out a way that's not going to disrupt bodybuilding. We all know that you can take a drink of alcohol, but alcohol is like the worst thing for bodybuilding. Like if you're a drinker, it's like toxic to muscle. It's not good for your liver. It's not like the thing you want to do while you're in the midst of being a bodybuilding competitor, where you try to gain muscle and or burn fat. So bodybuilders try to find alternatives that don't have any kind of negative ramification, and that they can, in their mind, justify will lower cortisol levels by keeping their stress levels down. And usually some sort of opiate does that. I mean, nubain did it back in the 90s and early 2000s. Now guys, like I said, use kratom. You know, once again, if it's used responsibly, it's fine. If it's not responsible, unfortunately, because it usually leads to irresponsible use of it, it's a negative. So my suggestion is don't get started on it. It's not a good thing to do. Neither nubain nor GHB nor, you know, kratom. But some people, you know, it helps them. Some people have a drug addict mentality and they need something to relax them, and that's good. But like I said, in hindsight, if I had to look back, I wish I would have picked up yoga and learned how to meditate, you know, back then. That would have been a better way to, you know, relieve the stress or anxiety. Or, you know, when you contest dieting, you're starving all the time. And a lot of these things, you know, take the edge off. But it seems like now with all the GLP-1 agonists out there, like retatrutide, Mounjaro, guys are using, you know, people are using that to take the edge off the appetite. And it seems like, you know, I was reading a statistic that one of the reasons why Vegas is going bankrupt is because no one drinks anymore. This new generation of people out there don't drink. They don't go out and socialize like they used to, and they don't. And because of that, Vegas's appeal is nothing great. People would rather just go gamble online on their phone, and you know, I don't know what they do for enjoyment, but I guess they just they get the buzz of the social media. The TikTok is taking the place of substances, which is good in a sense. They're not at least doing, you know, drugs and alcohol anymore, but they're becoming antisocial in the same vein. And Vegas is all about being social, right? Getting out there, partying, going to the clubs, having a good time. You know, no one wants to do that anymore. And you know what? It's Vegas's fault because they started charging too much money. It used to be free valet parking at every hotel. Now you got to pay, you know, $40 every time you go to a hotel for parking for an hour or two, which is ridiculous. You know, the prices and all the fees they charge you at these hotels are ridiculous. You think you're paying, you know, $200 for a hotel night. By the time you check out, it's $300 because of all the extra fees. So Vegas did it to themselves. They really did. They did not make it a user-friendly place to go anymore. Like I said, when I would originally go there back in the 90s and early 2000s, I would rent a car because it was free to park everywhere. And I would just drive from hotel to hotel and hang out and just have fun. Not anymore. So it's a combination. But yeah, you know, I wouldn't recommend doing those drugs, but that's what we did back then.
And that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, all new episode of the After Hours podcast, as well as Heavy Muscle Radio Monday, Dave Palumbo and Chris Aceto. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss this or any other shows that we have on this channel. Again, preview segments beginning soon for the 2026 Arnold Classic. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.